In this video, we're going to talk about when I was a beginner woodworker, some of the mistakes that I made so that you don't make those same mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. We all know that. But typically you try to learn from your mistakes. Instead of making mistakes on your own, I'm going to give you some advice and some mistakes that I made so that you don't repeat those. You don't have to listen to me. You can work through your own stuff. I'm just trying to help you out. Mistake number one is just rushing through projects. This is with any industry, any project you're working on, not just woodworking specifically. Rushing through something usually doesn't turn out very well. Why would you rush through it in the first place? Well, this goes back to your pricing. I talked about pricing your projects correctly in a previous video and how underpricing your projects can hurt you more than overpricing. In my experience, the reason I have rushed through projects is because I underpriced something. I might have priced something based on it taking me an estimated 2 hours, whereas in reality it took me 5 or 10 hours. So what happens? I get mentally unmotivated or demotivated and I try to rush through and hurry up and get it done. This usually just does not save time in the long run. Usually taking your time saves much more time in the long run because you're more focused, you're more involved in the project, you're more dedicated to the task that you're doing. The last thing that you want to do is to have to repeat something twice or more times than 2 because you rushed through it the first time. It's true what they say, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. The second mistake that I've made, and I've made this mistake many times, is ignoring wood movement or ignoring wood grain direction. You need to pay attention to wood movement, especially if something is made entirely of solid hardwood. As temperature and humidity changes, and it always will, from your shop to someone's house that is conditioned, whether it's heat and air, or even just a different part of the country with a different humidity level, wood will expand and contract. That's what they call wood movement, and it can cause serious problems. A bad example may be that when there's end grain to long grain, that joint, when it leaves your shop on the project, may be super tight and flush, but as temperature and humidity changes, that joint may expand out, or it may contract in and now it's bowing out another piece. Not good for the final project and not good image on you as a woodworker. Pay attention to wood movement and wood direction. You typically don't run end grain into long grain unless you allow for that. Wood movement is the #1 reason why projects can warp or crack over time. Can you do me a quick favor? Hit the like button down below and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out. Thank you. The third mistake that I made is buying the wrong tools first before finding the right tools. Now, I've discussed in other videos about buying cheap tools is okay when you're starting out, but there's a fine line there. If you go too cheap, you're going to buy 5 of those cheap tools for more money than you could have spent buying one nice tool. I had this problem. I was cheap. I wanted to have as many tools as possible no matter what type of tools that I actually needed. Focus on what you need. Buy what you need, not what you want. In my early days, I wish I would have focused more on a jointer and a table saw specifically. A table saw, in my opinion, is the heart of any workshop. No matter what kind of woodworking you're doing, what discipline you're in, a table saw is where it's at. Generally, a table saw can do most everything that a miter saw can do unless you're dealing with just super chunky, large material. Other than that, a table saw can do everything a miter saw can do, especially with a miter gauge and some other accessories for your table saw. And frankly, a table saw is more accurate than a miter saw. Anyways, I wish I would have focused more on getting a nice table saw. Instead, I went with a cheap table saw, a cheap joiner, a cheap planer, a cheap miter saw, just to have all these tools. And in reality, I didn't need all those tools. I needed a nice table saw. So again, just focus on what you need, not what you want. What you need is the stuff that will actually make you money. Now, if you're aiming to do this as a hobby, buy what you want. You're doing this for fun. It's not work. When it becomes a business, you're trying to make money. It's no longer fun at that point. You can enjoy your work and have fun, but you're aiming to make money. You need to focus on what you need. The next mistake that I've made several times is just simply not planning ahead. And this could be in the design process of a project or even just with measurements. I get so impatient. I do not like projects that take more than a couple days to complete. I like to be able to go out into the shop in the morning, and by the time I get done, I like the satisfaction of having something that I've made. Impatience is what causes me not to plan ahead. Many times I don't follow plans. I generally make a project, mess it up a bunch of times, make another one, mess that up maybe 1 or 2 times, and then make the final project. That final project is where I design some of my own plans, many of which you can find on my website. There's a link in the description. During all those mess ups that I talk about is just time wasted. And that's the mistake that I'm saying you could avoid. Plan your measurements out, measure twice or 5 times, then cut once. Plan your joinery. How are those 2 pieces of wood going to connect to each other? Plan that ahead of time. Also plan your access. And what I mean is if you're building a box or something that has multiple sides and you need to get inside of it, plan ahead and think 2 steps ahead of how are you going to get inside of that. If you assemble something together and now you can't get access inside, you may have a problem. This is where things like dry fitting come in, where you just kind of mock assemble it before you actually apply wood glue, screws, brad nails, mechanical fasteners, whatever it is. The biggest mistake that I've made to date, and I think everybody can relate to this, is skipping safety procedures. Because frankly, safety always sounds kind of cheesy. Let's just be honest about it. The dumb safety videos that you have to watch at your job or that you've seen when you were growing up is what I always think of when someone talks about safety. But it is important. It may not be as important for this one particular project. For example, if you are exposed to something loud on this particular project, it may not be a big deal. But if you're doing woodworking for 10 years and beyond, one small thing that can affect your hearing in a very minute way compounds and adds up. Hearing specifically is the one that I always seem to forget about. I've gotten better with wearing eye protection, and I always have foot protection on in my shop and proper clothing and such, but hearing protection I seem to just forget sometimes. It's really easy to run over to the planer for 30 seconds, plane down one board, and be done. You don't want to walk all the way to the other side of your shop to grab those earplugs. But I will say this adds up. I've spent a whole day before doing nothing but milling wood, and at the end of the day, my ears are ringing a little bit. Yeah, not good. Another safety precaution to take that I sometimes forget about is kickback on a table saw. I have had 2 instances of kickback on the table saw that I would consider major, neither of which were crazy injuries, but they scared the living shit out of me. And so just be very careful with kickback on your table saw. Never cut something that is shorter than the length of your blade. Dust collection is another big one. I made a video on ways that you can improve your dust collection. You can find it linked up here. Dust collection particles are the most dangerous the smaller they are. The ones that you can't see will kill you quicker than the ones you can see. Those are foreign objects when you breathe them into your lungs. Take the extra 3 minutes to connect your shop vac to the machine or to the tool before you start working. Save yourself from the long run. The last mistake that I made that I'll give you as a piece of advice is you're trying to do everything at once. Don't do that. Niche down. I've made a video about this as well, but you need to focus on one discipline or maybe 2. Don't try to be the jack of all trades, because then you're the master of nothing. You may think, well, I'm going to do everything possible because my audience will be this big instead of this big if I niche down. The difference is if you're doing 100 different things, you may be able to charge $1 a piece, let's just say $100. If you niche down, you're going to be doing 10 things, but maybe you can charge $10 or more. But let's pretend like you charge $10 for 10 things. It's the same amount of money as up here, but you're only having to do 10 projects instead of 100. So you're doing 10 projects, $10, a lot less work, but the same amount of money, if not more. And then you become known as that guy, whether it's cutting boards, signs, bowls, pins, whatever it is. You are the pin guy, you are the bowl guy, the cutting board guy, not the generic woodworker that may be able to do something if I call him. Niche down, find your place, and focus on that. Laser focused. Quick video, simple video. Hope you can learn from these mistakes. Hey, before you go, you might enjoy this video also, and that big round button is where you can click to subscribe to my channel. Please do that.